of you doing? Welcome back to yet another exciting session of BYJU'S social science classes. Now, I hope that all of you are very excited. I definitely am, because today we're going to be finishing our last session of this very exciting chapter. But before I actually get to that session, I want to give you one small reminder again. Please, we have ANTHE. You know what ANTHE is. Register for it. This is a brilliant opportunity. Registration is absolutely free. There are so many benefits to registering for this examination. So do it now, no? Okay. Apart from this, we've got mission midterm, which is on, which is our endeavor for us teachers at BYJU'S to basically help you to ace your midterms and to do very, very well. So for that, we've got a whole host of different sort of sessions that we're doing in terms of strategy sessions. We've got question-driven sessions. We've got revision sessions. And in terms of social science, I will be putting out some shorts for you that will help you to do revision in bits. Okay, now with that, let us continue with our chapter, The Rise of Nationalism in Europe, Part 4. What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Now, we know that we have done 3 sessions for this particular chapter before, right? We've done part 1, part 2, part 3. So let's talk about what we did in our immediate session before, which was last week, which was session number 3. So in session number 3, we discussed how revolutionary nationalism caused several key events in Europe, such as the July Revolution of 1830. We spoke about here how absolute monarchy was replaced by constitutional monarchy. Then we went ahead and spoke about the Greek War of Independence, which is where how Greece basically became a nation, right? It took away the power of the Ottomans and it basically won against them and became a nation state. Then we spoke about the ideas of romanticism, where culture, and we had stories and dance and music, which basically inspired nationalism. We also spoke about the situation in terms of the poverty of the people at this point in time and how there were so many hardships, and that led to the popular revolt. And we also spoke about the revolution of the liberals in 1848. Now, these were very important events, very important milestones. So I really hope that these concepts are clear to all of you. Now, just in case you have any doubts, please do let me know in the comment section below, and we will definitely try and answer all your questions. And definitely, please, it's very important, do not forget to go and check out our previous videos, which is Rise of Nationalism, part 1, 2 and 3 on our BYJU'S 9 to 10 channel, because this is going to form this beautiful connection with what we are doing in today's segment, right? So talking about today's segment, today, let us see how these revolutionary movements and nationalistic sentiments and feelings that we've been speaking about in the previous sessions, how they led to concrete results, right? So today our question is, how did the revolutions impact Europe? Right? So it is in this context that today we will discuss the concrete results of the various revolutions in Europe, which were the unification of Germany, unification of Italy, unification of Great Britain to some extent. And by the way, there are some other topics in this context as well, like we will be discussing the female figure as an allegory for the nation, and we will also be talking about nationalism and imperialism, right? So we have a lot to do today, so let's quickly get to it, and let us start with the unification of Germany first. And this was a very important concrete result that we got out of the revolutions and the widespread nationalist sentiments. So as I said, we know that there was already a widespread nationalist feeling among all middle-class Germans who had previously been segregated into a confederation of 39 states. Now, as we've discussed in the previous sessions also, Germany had already once tried to unify in 1848, right? But at that point in time, they had failed because you had the oppressive force of the monarchy, the military, and the Junkers, who were basically large landowners in Prussia. They basically opposed them and they put them down. And at this point in time, the liberal nationalists, they could not get what they were looking for, which is basically the unification of Germany. But after 1848, we had Prussia, which took on the leadership of the movement for national unification. So Prussia says that now we will work towards this cause. So at that point in time, you had the chief minister of Prussia, who was Otto von Bismarck, and he was the architect of this process. He basically put it all together. He carried out this process of German unification with the help of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy. Right, so this movement for unification has started again after 1848, and finally, over 7 years, you have 3 wars that took place with Austria, Denmark and France, and finally this ended in Prussian victory and completed the process of German unification. So, in January 1871, which by the way is a very important date, please remember this date. January 1871, you had the Prussian king, Kaiser William I, who was basically proclaimed German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. And on 18 January 1871, you had an assembly comprising the princes of the German states, representatives of the army, and important Prussian ministers, including the chief minister Otto von Bismarck, who gathered in the unheated Hall of Mirrors. Ooh, so cold. They gathered over there in the Palace of Versailles to proclaim the new German Empire headed by Kaiser William I of Prussia. Now, you are probably thinking, why would there be such a big revolution just to replace the monarchy with another king? Well, I want to point out to you that it is very important to understand that this new king, that is Kaiser William I or Kaiser William I, he represented a leadership of the German nation. So he was the leader of the German nation. Before this, you did not have Germany was not a nation state. So here he represented the leadership of a German nation where the Parliament and the people had the real power, right? Not the monarchy. So this is the difference. And here now, the new state placed a strong emphasis on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial systems in Germany. And you had the Prussian measures and practices, which were so good and such a success that they actually became a model for the rest of Germany. And that is how Germany became a nation state in 1871. Please remember this, very, very important. Now, just like Germany, in the middle of the 19th century, the Italian people also found themselves completely fragmented and torn apart into 7 separate kingdoms. So basically, before 1858, Italy was divided into various states ruled by different dynasties. For example, in the north, you had the Austrian Habsburg Empire. Right? Then you had the central regions, which were basically controlled by the Pope. I'm just giving you an example of how it was divided. Then you had the south, which was basically ruled over by the Bourbon kings of Spain. And then you had the Sardinia-Piedmont area, which, by the way, please note, was the only one which was actually ruled by an Italian princely house, right? So they were the only ones who were actually of Italian origin. Now, here you had the king who was Victor Emmanuel II, and you had his chief minister Cavour, who played a very large part in the Italian unification. Now, by the way, you need to understand that at this time, even the Italian language had not acquired one common form and still had many regional and local variations. But the spirit of revolutionary nationalism awaked within them as well, and they all rose up to strive up for a unified Italian nation. Ooh, I've got goosebumps. All right. Now, let me tell you that during the 1830s, you had Giuseppe Mazzini, who sought to, or basically looked to put together a coherent program for the unitary Italian Republic. Now, he had at that time formed a secret society called Young Italy for the dissemination or the carrying out of these goals. But Giuseppe Mazzini failed in his attempt to create a unified Italy. And as I mentioned before, you had the mantle of leadership then which came onto the king of Sardinia Piedmont, Victor Emmanuel II. Right now, he, like I told you, was the only one who actually belonged to an Italian princely house. So, in the eyes of the ruling elites of this region, a unified Italy offered them the possibility of economic development as well as political dominance. Right? So this is why they said that they want economic development, they want political dominance, and which is why a unified Italy was a necessity. So the chief minister of Sardinia, who was the Count of Cavour, he entered into a diplomatic alliance with France, which basically resulted in Sardinia Piedmont defeating the Austrian forces in 1859, which means the Austrian Habsburg Empire, which was ruling a large part of these states which I said. Right? So they defeated these Austrian forces. Now, apart from that, you had, apart from the regular troops, there was a large number of armed volunteers which were under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi, who also joined this movement. Now, do you know who Giuseppe Garibaldi is? Let me know your answers in the comment section below. Now, let me move on and let me tell you. So we spoke about how they've defeated the Austrian Empire earlier. Now, in 1860, they march into South Italy and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and there, under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi, they basically succeeded in winning the support of the local peasants, and they drive out the Spanish rulers. So finally, you have in 1861, again very important year, please note this, in 1861, they've driven out the Spanish rulers and the Austrian people are out, and now you have Victor Emmanuel II, who was proclaimed the king of United Italy. Remember, he was the king of Sardinia Piedmont area. Now he is the king of United Italy, and Italy is now a nation state. Right? All right. I love history, really. Okay, so now, so far we have discussed the unification of Germany and Italy. So we spoke about German unification in 1871, and we know that the Italian unification happened in 1861, and these are very important years. So please remember when this has happened, right? Now here in these unifications, we saw that the wars were fought, and basically there was a lot of violence that had to be enacted in order to make these nation states, right? But you know that this is not the only way in which a nation state can be created. There was another nation that was actually created without warfare, too much warfare, rather, without too much bloodshed. So do you know which nation we are talking about? Well, we are talking about Great Britain. Now, actually, if you think about it, some scholars have even claimed that the Great Britain's model of nation building is actually probably one of the best models of nation building, right? Why? Because like I said earlier, this is basically because the formation of this particular nation state did not come about through revolution or a great amount of bloodshed. So how did it become a nation state? Let us take a look at it in some more detail. So let's understand the situation. Britain, before the 18th century, was not a nation state. Now, the primary identity of the people was still in conflict over here, and it was rooted in different ethnicities, basically because the British Isles were basically divided into different ethnicities. You had a lot of different kind of people, like you had the English, you had the Scot, you had the Irish, and you had the Welsh. Now, there was industrialization that started happening, as I told you. So as a result of industrialization, we had England that started becoming very powerful and basically went ahead and started dominating the other nations and islands, right? So we know that when a place becomes really powerful, they start then exerting control over the others. Now this situation basically came to a head in 1688 when English established itself as a nation state and the English Parliament seized power from the monarchy. Right, so as you see, this was basically, it became a nation state because of economic power, which happened because of industrialization, right? Now, this, after 1688, basically you had the Act of Union, which was carried out between England and Scotland in 1707. Now, this is very important, again, very important date. The Act of Union between England and Scotland, which basically resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. However, let me say that this union was definitely more suited or much better for England than Scotland, because England started being the more powerful one. They started dominating Scotland in all the socio-political and cultural spheres. And this was evinced by the fact that the British Parliament was dominated by mostly English members. So England has the power over here again. So they're subjugating Scotland. Now what starts happening to Scotland on the other hand? Scotland, as a result of this, starts to lose its distinctive culture and starts to lose its political institutions. And this was especially true for the Catholic clans in the Scottish Highlands, who were very severely repressed whenever they tried to assert their independence. So you had the Gaelic language, which was native to the Scottish, that was completely forbidden and banned. They were not allowed to wear their national dress, right? So you see how much control England has put over Scotland. Now, if you talk about Ireland, Ireland also did not fare much better, because Ireland was actually a country that was divided between the Protestants and the Catholics, right? So you had over here the Catholics, who were definitely clearly the majority in the country. But England, basically, they went and they helped the Protestants seize the power, right? So finally, after a period of struggle, Ireland was taken over by the British after a failed revolution, which was led by Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen in 1798. So again, Wolfe Tone is very important. You should remember his name. Let me put it down for you over here. He is an Irishman who basically fought for Irish freedom, but they didn't really succeed. So they basically, now there was a new British nation which was finally formed with a dominant English overtone. So what happened in 1801? You had Ireland, which was taken over by the British after a failed revolution, right? Then you had the Union Jack as the English flag, you had a new English anthem, and you had the English language, which were all symbols of this new union. Okay, now I have a very interesting question for you. Can you tell me what was the new anthem of the British nation? Drop your answers in the comment section below. Okay, now let's move on, right? So we've spoken about in the last segment, we've basically spoken about the impact that the nationalistic revolution had on Europe. We spoke about concrete results such as the unification of Germany. We went ahead and spoke about the unification of Italy, and we also spoke about Great Britain in that context, right? Now, we will carry on the same discussion and we will discuss the nation as an allegory, and we will also go ahead and discuss nationalism and imperialism in that same context. So, we saw how the idea of nationalism got hold of people, leading to war, violence, and even the formation of new nation states. But if you think about the word nation or the idea of the nation, nation in itself is such an abstract idea, isn't it? I mean, how do you turn something so abstract into something that is concrete, which will then go and motivate the masses into action? How do you turn something that is abstract into something that is concrete? Basically, what I'm trying to ask you over here is, in other words, how do you see or how do you visualize a nation, because it is something that is so abstract? So, you had a lot of artists at this point in time that came up with symbols, images, or even allegories to represent these abstract ideas. Now, what exactly is an allegory? Let's discuss this. Basically, an allegory is when you have an abstract idea. For example, you have an abstract idea of greed or envy or freedom or liberty. All these are abstract. When these abstract ideas are personified, or in other words, they are expressed through a person or a thing, it is called an allegory. Right? So now an allegorical story has two meanings. It has one literal and one symbolic. So, the artists decided to give nations the same allegorical treatment, and thus you had the allegory of the nation which was born. And you had female allegories which were invented by artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. So, for example, in France, the nation was christened or named Marianne, which is quite a popular Christian name, which basically underlined the idea of a people's nation. So, Marianne's characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and the republic, that is basically the red cap, the tricolour, as well as the cockade. Now, what is a cockade? Well, a cockade is a knot of ribbons which is worn as a badge. Then you had the statues of Marianne, which were, put in various public squares. They were marked on coins and stamps, and that basically led to this feeling of, oh, we are one nation. You see? Yeah. All right. Now, similarly, you had Germania, who became the allegory of the German nation. Now, in visual representations, Germania actually wears a crown of oak leaves, as the German oak basically stands for heroism. So you see that we're actually personifying the idea of the nation, right? Okay. Now, we have seen throughout this chapter that during the first half of the 19th century, let me put this down for you. During the first half of the 19th century, you had the idea of nationalism, which was strongly linked with the ideals of collective identity. So I'm just putting it down for you here in short so you understand, because this is how it changed. It was about collective identity, it was about freedom, it was about liberal democracy, right? So this is what it stood for in the first half of the 19th century. But this changed. In the second half of the 19th century, there were changes in the idea of nationalism. It then went ahead and took on a very narrow perspective with limited and imperialistic ends. Now, what is imperialism? Imperialism is a system in which one powerful nation controls or conquers another nation. You see that? It's subjugating the other nation. So, in the middle of the 19th century, that's the second half of the 19th century, as we said, nationalism, the idea of nationalism changed from collective identity and, liberal democracy. Now it became more of an imperialist competition between nations in order to assert who was more dominant and who was more powerful. And this feeling of mutual intolerance, it grew steadily to the point where these countries were ready to engage in warfare on a scale never seen before. So you see how the idea of nationalism has changed and how it can actually lead to so much conflict now. Now, talking about conflict, the Balkan region was one of the many that fell prey to power politics due to these imperialist tendencies. In fact, the tensions in the Balkans rose to such heights that eventually you had the Great War, which was also known as the First World War, which would then go ahead and break out in this region. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail to understand it. Let's talk about the background of the Balkans first. The Balkans was basically a region of geographic and ethnic variations. It was very strategically located, and if you take a look at the map of the Balkan area, it basically includes present-day regions of Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro. And the people over here were broadly known as Slavs. Now, the Balkans, also like Greece, were originally under Ottoman control. However, with the spread of nationalistic ideas and the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, so basically they've defeated the Ottomans, now the Balkan region has become highly unstable. Also, all these different Slavic nations that I've spoken about, they started their struggle to gain their own independence, and they started fighting with each other, making the region primed for major conflicts, right? And so the Balkan issue became a source of contention for many European powers like Russia, Germany, England, and Austro-Hungary. Basically, these powers, they clashed over the Balkan resources like trade, colonies, and military might. So basically, what was the situation over here is that these European powers basically wanted to subjugate and control the Balkans, and they basically fought with each other for control of the Balkans. You see, so these clashes led to a series of wars and continuous struggles, which ultimately then resulted in the First World War, which was from 1914 to 1918. Right? All right. Whoa, with that, we have come to the end of the chapter, Rise of Nationalism in Europe. So let's quickly recap what we've studied in this particular session. We looked at the concrete results of the revolutions and the nationalistic sentiments in Europe. We looked at the unification of Germany. We spoke about the unification of Italy, and we spoke about the unification of Great Britain that was slightly different from these two. We also went ahead and learned about female figures being considered as an allegory of the nation, which is basically the personification of the nation. And we also went ahead and spoke about nationalism and imperialism, and we spoke about how the meaning of nationalism changed from the first part of the 19th century to the second half of the 19th century. Now, I have a very interesting question for you. Talking about allegories, what is the female allegory of India called? Let me know your answers in the comment section below. I will be waiting. I'm sure all of you know this answer and I'm going to get lots of answers. Okay, so with that, we are at the end of this session. But once again, good news. We have the CBSE board results which are out, and we have our very own student, Trisha Biswal, who was the BYJU'S premium student as well as a follower of our channel, subscriber of our channel, who has scored excellent results, and she's put an interview out there. So please go ahead, watch this interview. Watch the secret of her success, and I would say follow the same path by downloading the BYJU'S learning app, becoming a premium student, as well as subscribing to our channel, because you're going to find a lot of information on both platforms. And if you have both of it together, while they're very different, both of these together will actually help you to do a super job in your exams, right? Now, for more such sessions, hey, before sessions, sorry, I just saw, I wanted to give you one more good news. I basically wanted to tell you that the BYJU'S MLP program is now free, but it is now free only for the first 1,000 users every week. So hurry up, click on the link, register for it, and type in the code YT first to avail of this program. Absolutely free. If and if only if you are one of the first 1,000 users in that particular week. But it's happening every week, so hurry up. All right, with that, I have reached the end of my session. So for more such sessions and videos, definitely tune into the BYJU'S 9 to 10 channel, and definitely do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'm gonna see you really soon. Bye-bye.